a series that broke all broadcasting records, and those records lasted for decades.
The way you have structured your book, it's coming from someone who's a filmmaker. It seemed like a screenplay.
I was the first Indian actor that went from Bollywood to Hollywood. You suddenly realize you're part of something much bigger than yourself. Sandokan is what made me a star in Europe. And not just Italy, across the whole of Europe. I went bankrupt betting on the success of Apple. For me, always the best Bond ever. Although I do like Daniel Craig a lot. And no country has given me more love and honor than Italy. But India is where my roots are.
You're not comfortable with the song and dance routine in India?
Nobody does song and dance better than Bollywood. For Khoon Bhari Maang, Rekha got her second Filmfare Award. It was a film that redefined my relationship with Bollywood because it gave me a second innings in Bollywood. Hi, I'm Kabir Bedi, and you're watching an exclusive interview with me done by Faridoon on Hungama on my book, Stories I Must Tell, The Emotional Life of an Actor.
Kabir sir, welcome on Bollywood Hungama.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Faridoon.
And sir, congratulations for this wonderful autobiographies, Stories I Must Tell, The Emotional Life of an Actor. I must tell you that it has been an absolute revelation. Once I went into reading it, and the way it started, I think the first chapter in itself on Beatles was so engrossing that it completely just consumed me, and it has been a revelation. The way you have written the format that you have chosen, it's not a linear format, and it's a surprise all the way. How important is this autobiography in your career, in your life?
Well, firstly, it's very gratifying to me. It's very gratifying to me that you call it a revelation. You know, that means that it's opened the doors of your mind to certain things you didn't know about me, certain aspects of things that happened. It's a very important book for me because I had to take a decision. Did I want my story to go with me, or did I want to leave behind my story? I want to put it down for all time for people to see. And it's a book that was churning inside me for about 10 years, and eventually I sat down and wrote it. It is very important to me that I wrote this book because it's been inside me for so long. And fortunately, I was able to use the pandemic to focus and get it down and find myself a wonderful publisher in Westland, and finally have the book in my hand.
Right. So why I said revelation was that we keep on hearing about Indian actors going to Hollywood, doing certain work, and they're spoken about so much. But what you've done in the 1970s, in terms of the sort of unprecedented success that you've seen in Italy and Europe, and then you went to Hollywood, and you've done a lot of work over there, including Octopussy and The Bold and the Beautiful, that I think everyone watched in India as well. Yeah. And you've done so much of work in India. So people may have heard about these things in many of them, but once they read the book and they come to know the extent of your popularity and the work that you've done, I think that is going to be a revelation. One more thing that really endeared me to you, to be honest, I feel that I know you much more than the last conversation that we had. Endeared me to you was the honesty and the candidness with which you've written the books. I think any biography or any autobiography, it becomes really relevant once it is having an honest approach.
Right.
There is a certain level of objectivity, because many times people they're not able to be objective. You've displayed your shortcomings.
Yep.
You've admitted to your certain mistakes of your life. You've revealed a lot of details about yourself in such a wonderful manner that it totally surprises you. Like, I'll give you one example. Like, when your second marriage ended, you've written that I was unfaithful. Now, I think it requires a lot of guts to admit certain things the way you've done.
True. It was very important for me to tell the story as honestly as I could, to tell it with as raw an emotion in terms of what I felt at the time and what I went through, and also allow myself to be vulnerable. It was important that people sensed that what I was telling was the way it really was, the way it really happened. And I didn't want to write a biography saying what a great guy Kabir Bedi is, and look what he's done, he's made India proud, he's had all these successes abroad, etc., etc. That's a book a lot of actors might write, but essentially, I really felt that if people are to benefit from knowing this, reading my book, it's not only me telling them how I got there, but also telling them of the mistakes that I made that they would do well to avoid in their own lives. And because we are all human, we are all part of the human race, we have all the strengths and frailties of the human race. And I just wanted to share that journey with people, even though it was painful to revisit a lot of those places. Many things in the past you hope to leave behind, never to think about again. But if it was an integral part of my story, and especially part of the stories that I was telling, then I had to tell it, no matter what, and let the chips fall where they may. It was a risk I took, but I think, judging by the few reactions I've received from people who've seen copies of the book, it seems that people have related to it in some way. And the feedback I'm getting is very positive, because in some way, because the emotion that I put in there, it has touched people. And I think my book is really an emotional experience. That's what it is at heart.
Absolutely. And now people will get to know that you started your career as an ad filmmaker. You're part of Lintas, and you've contributed a lot to Lintas at a very interesting time. I saw one of your interviews. You said that the sexual revolution was taking place. People were craving freedom. There were marches for peace in 1960s at a time when being part of military was chauvinistic. But when I read the book, what I felt was that the way you have structured your book, it's coming from someone who's a filmmaker. You understand the nuances. What is the importance of a screenplay? It seemed like a screenplay. There are interesting moments that you just mentioned. You suddenly mentioned that, and I was there at a party in Italy, and there I was. Audrey Hepburn was in front of me. So those elements, they're coming so matter of factly that it surprises you, and you marvel that this man has met so many illustrious people. We'll come to that later. But still, that structuring part, how crucial was it for you to just structure the writing part of it in an interesting manner, engrossing manner?
Well, structure was a real issue with me, because I made many attempts, as I mentioned, over the last 10 years to write this book. And after writing about 30, 40 pages, I would say, I'm bored with this book. I really don't want to read this book. I'm not interested in my own book. Because I was trying the linear form, things started in a certain way, then I went here and I did this and there's this. I thought, what's the story here? You can't wait for a story's climax to come 300 pages later. And therefore I had this vision, this flash, that I could tell my life story through 7 stories that were central to my life, based on the people I knew and loved, people and places that I knew and loved. And structuring it in that way, I was able to give each story a beginning, middle, and a climax, and keep the tension in each story. And each story overlaps each other in time, but each is a separate story. And taken collectively, they form what my life is. I found that form of storytelling far more interesting than trying to tell it in a long, linear way with a climax at the end of 300 pages. This way, at the end of every story, there is a resolution, whether it's tragic or whether it's triumphant or whether it's, there is a resolution, it comes to an end, and then a new story begins. I found that much more interesting to write, and I was able to tell the stories far more interestingly. And as you notice, I've tried to tell my stories in a way as if I'm speaking to you. I'm not trying to be Shakespeare, I'm not trying to be Salman Rushdie, I'm not trying to be any of these great writers of the English language. I just want to tell it as cleanly and simply and bank on the strength of the story. Of course, one goes into beautiful descriptions at times, one goes to explore emotions at times, but it's written in very simple, relatable English. And that was very important to me. People should feel that this is language that I listen to, I hear. And also I wanted to write a book that people can't put down. They have to turn the page.
No, absolutely. And I think the simplicity of the writing part of it, I think that is something which is really striking. I read the book very keenly. I was trying to find any spelling mistake or any typos. There's none. And I'm sure that you've researched it and proofread it very, very closely. That's very apparent. Now, there are so many interesting details that one comes across. And I feel that in many ways they were trend-setting. You got yourself a publicist in Europe and US. Many people they would not have even heard of in India for that matter. They were managers and there were people who used to take care of publicity, but you had a proper system that you followed. Now, do you feel that can be a learning experience for a lot of people, that how you really started the trend of in many ways, much before anyone would have heard about it?
Well, today a lot of people use public relations, etc. And when I was actually going to Italy, it's written about it in my book. It was a very strange story because at that time I was with Parveen Babi, and I knew, and then my series Sandokan was stuck in a court case between the broadcaster and the production house that did it because it went over budget. So suddenly a Rome judge decreed that this series can be released, but the money in dispute should be put into escrow. So the broadcaster, the minute they got it, they broadcast it. You know, they feared that there'd be some legal challenge or delay or something. So they started the broadcast. So it caught me by surprise in India. Now, I wasn't sure how it had done because those days there was no email, there were no mobile phones. You had to book your calls through telephone operators. I couldn't reach anybody. Nobody was calling me. And I was seriously worried, except one journalist called me and he said, Kabir, your series is doing well, you must come. And that was enough for me to buy 2 tickets to Rome and say, Parveen, let's go there. So I told this journalist, I said, look, please find some public relations person or media person who can get a few interviews for me. I didn't know if I'd get interviews there even. So he had what I call my Laurel and Hardy. One was looked huge, one looked tiny. Simona and Mario, and they when I arrived at when Parveen and I arrived at Rome airport, we started descending, and I saw this bank of paparazzi in front of me, and this flash bulb went off, and I thought, who the hell are they photographing? And I looked behind me to see which celebrity was on the plane, and Parveen gave me a jab in the ribs and said, "They're for you, smile." And I smiled. And after that, I realized I had become a star in Italy. And of course, the media frenzy was quite exceptionally intense those days. Every radio station, every magazine, every television station, every newspaper wanted interviews. Parveen and I were on the cover of virtually every magazine in Italy. It was a series that broke all broadcasting records, and those records lasted for decades. So Sandokan is what made me a star in Europe, and not just Italy, across the whole of Europe. And it led to opening the doors of the West for me. And that's what actually led me to push on and move to Hollywood, where I spent 15 years. I came back and did a lot of things with the Italians in terms of films and other series, but it gave me the courage to go to Hollywood. So I could live in Hollywood with dignity while I tried to establish a career. I was the first Indian actor that went from Bollywood to Hollywood and made a career. I didn't become a star in Hollywood, but I was a working actor, known in the business, and I did enough television to get me a lot of fans. I mean, just The Bold and the Beautiful in itself is viewed by perhaps 400 million people a day.
Absolutely.
And when you're on there for a year, you have no idea the number of fans it has across the world. It's broadcast in 140 countries. And your mailbox is full of the fans that write to you wanting autographs. And you suddenly realize you're part of something much bigger than yourself, as is the case with the Bond film. The James Bond film also is the longest running film franchise in the world. and it has legions of fans and fan clubs and conventions across the world. And all these people have the greatest interest in any actor who plays a role of any importance in a Bond film becomes a target for them. They write to him, they invite him. You just enter these universes of what The Bold and Beautiful is, what the Bond films are. They are worlds unto themselves. There are magazines they devote them to Bond films and to Bold and Beautiful. There are fan groups. And today I'm sure there are great online forums that unite all. These two things gave me worldwide fans and expanded the reach of my career. So the thing is, like you mentioned, I don't think anybody has seen all my work. People in India have seen my Bollywood films. In Europe, they've seen my European films. In America and the rest of the world, and they've seen my American television series, Highlander, Dynasty, Murder, She Wrote, etc., or 12 of those. So this book will give people an idea of the arc of my career and what I did in each country. But it's not about my work. This is not a book about कि मैंने ये film की, वो film. I mentioned them in the course of the story. These film set पे ये हुआ, वो हुआ. It's not that. It's more what I went through emotionally, whether enormous triumphs or enormous setbacks. And the films that happened along the way almost are incidental to the journey that
Absolutely. I think that is one of the biggest highlights of the book. It's a very personal book. And the films and your journey, those are episodes, how it nudged you forward. So you've said in this chapter, Agony and Ecstasy, that Hollywood devastated me. Italy and India resurrected me. Why do you say that?
Hollywood devastated me, India and Italy resurrected me. Well, what happened was there comes a point in my time in Hollywood where the roles just weren't adding up. So it was getting very expensive to stay on there. But I could have stayed on there because what was supporting me in this time was the work that I was doing in Italy, the series, the money that was coming from the series. What devastated me in Hollywood was not so much the films, but the investments that I made. I made huge investments in a company called Netscape, which is like the Google of those days. It was the first Netscape browser, and you had to pay to get it. And it had 80% of the market. And it promised to be what Google has become in the last 15 years. And so I invested heavily in it. That went bust because Microsoft came out with its own browser, which was free, and absolutely knocked the stuffing out of Netscape. I went bankrupt betting on the success of Apple, Apple today, which is the most valuable company in the world, because it had come down tremendously. And I thought it cannot go down below this anymore. Macs are so much better than the clunky world of PCs. It's got to come up. And even my son Siddharth, who was a techie who was studied at Carnegie Mellon University, the mecca of infotech, he said, in the end, the Mac will win. And he was right. But in the stock market, you can be right in the long term, but destroyed in the short term, because the short-term reverses make you suffer enormously. So it was not so much Hollywood that devastated me, but my time in Hollywood that devastated me. And given the fact that I didn't receive any mega film offers after The Bold and Beautiful, that also disillusioned me. And it was India and Italy that resurrected me when I was in dire financial straits at the time when I left Hollywood.
So if you talk about your journey in Italy, for example, and Europe too, in Spain and France, you've been mobbed like how? But in Italy, I saw one of your interviews that you must have done, I think 4 or 5 years back, and there was an Italian guy who came to India to interview you, and he was talking about the fact that his grandmother, his mother, and he himself, they're huge fans of yours. Across generations, people still remember what you did in 1970s in Sandokan.
Yeah, this is,
and everywhere that you go, people tend to mock you. That the sort of success that you've enjoyed in Italy, I think people in India, they still don't know about it, anything about it. You've also been awarded with the knighthood in Italy as well.
Yeah, I've
been
given
the biggest honor in Italy.
True.
Yeah.
But the fact is, what has helped us my generation everywhere is technology. You know, first in our days when films came, they came, they ran for 2-3 weeks or had a silver jubilee at most, and then they were never heard of again. Then came technology, so suddenly you had television that amplified your films, but that could only be seen, those films could only be seen when television chose to show them. Then came the DVDs, people could watch it when they wanted, and then came the internet. So suddenly all these films that had power, that had strength, that were hit films in the past, got repeated on television, repeated on the internet, repeated. And so it wasn't just a generation that was in my time that saw it. That generation and their children and their children's children continue to see the same thing because it was such a big hit. So it is true. I'm a household word in Italy. Everyone from grandmothers to grandchildren know me, and they've given me the highest civilian honor because of this series of Sandokan creating such an iconic figure, such an iconic character, which was then continued with television series and other work that I did. But no matter what else I've done in Italy, I'm always Sandokan for them because this is the unforgettable character I created. And the truth is, most actors are remembered for the one iconic character that they have created. I mean, if I say to you, Clark Gable, what film can you think of other than Gone with the Wind? If I say Chris Reeve, you'll say Superman, because these are the films that have remained in the memory of people, although they've done many other things. Only Sean Connery, perhaps, although he's also known as the Eternal Bond, because he did so much other great work afterwards, has a slightly wider image, but he's still the Eternal Bond. For me, always the best Bond ever. Although I do like Daniel Craig a lot, and I do think Casino Royale is one of the best films that the Bond franchise has made. In fact, one of the best films of this century as well. But I've lost the point I was trying to make here. Yes, that Italy has been a central part of my life, and no country has given me more love and honor than Italy. But India is where my roots are. Bollywood is what launched me, and I will always feel bound to India. India is the center of my heart, and this is where I choose to come back and live, even though I continue to act across the world. And this is from where I will tell my story.
Absolutely, and at one of the events, I think in Spain or France, there was a fan who apparently shouted at you that I want to have your baby.
Right, that became iconic. In some gathering, a girl said, "I want to have your baby," and of course, the press picked it up, and it kept getting repeated like a mantra for years. But as I wrote my book, there was that incident where I went to a bookstore for signing of the books, and the building, all 10 floors, was so packed with fans that the manager told me to leave the building because the building was not designed to hold so many people and that it would collapse and people would die. And I had to leave the building. And then I've written about all the adventures that followed on my way out, trying to get away from the building. And now I had to jump across the roofs of cars to get away. But that's a story for the book.
Now, when it comes to your journey in Bollywood, you also mentioned at the same time when you had started your journey so successfully in Italy and Europe, you're not comfortable with the song and dance routine in India.
No. That was a problem I had right from the beginning. I realized that I did not enjoy singing and dancing. Firstly, because I'm not a natural dancer. But more than that, somewhere because of my theater training, etc., I fancied myself as a serious dramatic actor. And I thought, I can't be singing songs in the middle of serious drama. It was a mistake. For two reasons. One is, if you aspire to be a leading man in Bollywood, you have to do song and dance. Secondly, nobody does song and dance better than Bollywood. We have the best musicians and the best choreographers in the world. And thirdly, it is something I enjoy watching enormously. I love watching Bollywood song and dance. I just don't like performing it. And so this was a thing I decided quite early that somehow I would have to either make my way as an actor in India that did not sing and dance, or I would have to go abroad. Therefore, even after the success of Kache Dhage with Raj Khosla, which had Vinod Khanna with me, which became a huge hit in those days, and people, producers were coming to me, and I was signing films and I was shooting films. When the Italians came and said, "Will you come to Rome for an audition at your own cost?"
Yes.
I said, "Yes, I'll go." I'll go. Because I saw it was a way in which it might solve my dilemma of not wanting to sing and dance in films. And in fact, that's what happened.
So you've done so much of work as an actor all across the world, which is phenomenal, and you continue to do that. But still, now when you've written this autobiography, how much do you owe your acting career to Alec Padamsee?
Alec Padamsee is the man that launched my acting.
Exactly.
Because yes, even though I had acted in school and I'd acted in college, when I came to Bombay in those days, and I began working in Lintas as a filmmaker, Alec Padamsee was my boss by an amazing coincidence, as a serendipity. And he was delighted to know I'd done theatre because apart from doing advertising, theatre was his real passion. And so he cast me in the role of Tughlaq. And Tughlaq was the first play of Girish Karnad in English. And Girish, of course, as we know, is one of our most illustrious playwrights in India. And it was a scene that rocked Bombay to its, from seashore to the inlands, because Tughlaq was the most successful English theatre in Bombay. And the opening scene of it is what gobsmacked them completely, because it had me standing, apparently nude. It looked as though I was nude with my arms out and back to the audience. Actually, I had a langot that, covered my vitals, but you couldn't see it in the top lighting. And Tughlaq, the emperor, stands there, and the courtiers come on, and they dress him, and then he turns around and begins his opening oration to the crowds. It was mesmerizing theatre, and it had great theatre actors, and that led to many producers making offers to me. So Alec Padamsee is the one who launched me as a professional actor from amateur theatre, because Alec and his group didn't pay, didn't charge, they just did theatre for the love of it. I've always thanked Alec for doing that. And then I did many other plays. 5 years later, I did another play with him called Gidhare, which was Vijay Tendulkar's play, Vultures in English. And then in the early 90s, I played Othello, Shakespeare's Othello, thanks to Alec Padamsee. And thanks to Alec Padamsee, he introduced me to my third wife, Nikki, who was playing Desdemona in the play. And so Alec has played a very central role in my life. Firstly, launching my career as an actor, and secondly, getting me married for the third time.
You've mentioned Khoon Bhari Maang as your most successful Hindi film, and it came at a very crucial time for you, when you were a bit disillusioned with Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it became a huge success.
Yes, I was shooting with Tom Selleck in Hawaii, and really my career wasn't going anywhere substantial. And I enjoyed the shooting of Magnum PI, etc., but I was very despondent with the way my career was going. And a call came in my Hawaii hotel room as the sun was setting over the sea. And I pick up the phone, and it's Rakesh Roshan. And Rakesh Roshan, who I call Guddu.
We worked together.
We'd worked together in my very first film, which released later, which is called Seema. So we'd known each other, and he said, Kabir, by then he'd become a successful producer and director, and he said, I want you to play the lead in my film. I said, what's the matter, Guddu? Is Bollywood on strike? He said, no, thing is, in this film, the hero becomes the villain. So no hero wants to do it. If I cast a villain in the role, then the game is up. Everyone knows from the beginning this man's a villain. You are the only one who can seem like a hero but become a villain, because you have a neutral image. And I said, great. I said, who's the actress? He said, Rekha. That just blew me away, because to be paired with Rekha, who was at that time had become unforgettable for her portrayal in Umrao Jahan, and to be paired, I mean, national award winner. I was more than thrilled. In fact, for Khoon Bhari Maang, Rekha got her second Filmfare Award. And it was a film that redefined my relationship with Bollywood because it gave me a second innings in Bollywood.
Exactly.
I came to do one film and I stayed on to do another 6, 7, 8 films, including Yalgar with Feroz Khan and other films. But it gave me a whole new beginning in Bollywood. And then again, I went back again to continue with the Bold and Beautiful and other things. But what happened is, because I kept coming and going, people had the illusion that I'm around and available. And it's very difficult to sustain a career on 3 continents, because the problem is, where are you? If you stay away too long, if you stay in one place too long, the other 2 places forget you. How can you be in 3 places at once? You can't. But you have to somehow do something that gives people the illusion that you're everywhere at the same time. And I managed to do that between Hollywood, Italy, and India, because I'd come back to India and I'd say host a film festival. So the whole country would see me. Kabir Bedi is around. Then you don't see him for another 3 years till he does another major event. Doesn't matter. He's in the ambience. Gardish mein hai kahin, you know. So you know that he's there. And that's what I managed to pull off.
One question that I had while I was reading the book was that I think your life can also be summed up as a traveler.
My life can be summed up as a traveler.
Yeah, because
very much so. I have been a traveler. I have been a vagabond in a sense, traveling from country to country and continent to continent, managing to start and sustain careers in various continents. I'm very much a traveler, but I always knew I'd come back to India because this is where my soul is, this is where my home is. Hi, I'm Kabir Bedi, and you're watching an exclusive interview with me done by Faridoon on Hungama on my book, Stories I Must Tell, The Emotional Life of an Actor.